The hall was quiet, except for the soft rustle of people finding their seats. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and flowers that had been placed near the stage. Excited murmurs floated around, but most people seemed relaxed, thinking the evening would be a series of simple performances. No one expected anything extraordinary tonight. Among the performers, there was one young woman sitting in a corner, her instrument resting gently on her lap. She looked calm from a distance, but inside, her heart was racing like a wild bird trapped in a cage. She had been waiting for this night for weeks. Every day after work, she would come home and practice for hours, repeating the same melodies over and over. Her fingers would ache, her eyes would burn, but she never stopped. Music was not just a hobby for her. It was her life. It was how she spoke when words failed, how she told stories without saying a single thing. She never thought of herself as a star or someone who would dazzle people, but she wanted to give this performance everything she had. Around her, other performers chatted loudly, some bragging about their skills or comparing themselves to one another. She kept her head down, listening quietly, letting the noise pass over her. She had learned long ago that confidence wasn't always shown in loud voices or boastful claims. Sometimes it was quiet, steady, and patient. That was the kind of confidence she had built. As the show started, the spotlight moved across the stage, highlighting each performer briefly. There was polite applause, smiles, and nods from the audience. The young woman watched carefully, noting how the crowd reacted. She could feel their expectations were low, like they were waiting for her to play a simple tune, nothing more. It was almost comforting in a way. They didn't expect much, so maybe they would be surprised. Backstage, she adjusted her instrument and took a deep breath. Her hands trembled slightly, but she reminded herself that this was just another practice session, just another chance to share the music she loved. She closed her eyes and pictured the notes in her mind, hearing the melody she had played countless times alone in her room. Every note had a story, every pause had meaning, and she felt that if she played from her heart, the audience would feel it too. As her turn approached, she could hear the faint applause for the performer before her. It was a lively piece, filled with energy, and the audience clapped enthusiastically. She smiled softly, happy for them, but she knew her own performance would be different. It wouldn't be about loudness or speed or flashy tricks. It would be about feeling, about taking the audience on a quiet journey that would leave them surprised at the depth hidden in something so simple. A friend of hers who had come to watch leaned over and whispered encouragement. They didn't need to say much. A simple nod or smile was enough to give her courage. She felt a warmth in her chest, a reminder that someone believed in her. That little bit of support made the trembling in her hands fade slightly. She knew that when she walked onto that stage, she wouldn't be alone. The announcer's voice echoed softly through the hall, introducing her. The audience shifted in their seats, some glancing at her with mild curiosity. She stepped forward, feeling the cool wood under her feet, and lifted her instrument. The lights were bright, but she focused on the music inside her mind. One gentle note escaped, pure and clear, and the hall seemed to hold its breath. She played the first few notes carefully, each one flowing into the next. At first, the melody was simple, almost understated. A few people in the audience nodded politely, expecting nothing more. But there was something in the air, a subtle energy that grew with each note. Her fingers moved with a confidence born of countless hours of practice, guiding the music through rises and falls, soft whispers and gentle pauses. The melody began to take shape, telling a story without words, and the audience started to lean in, noticing the beauty in what seemed like a simple tune. Backstage, other performers glanced at her, their eyes widening slightly as they heard the music. It was different from anything they had played, different from the showy performances meant to grab attention. This was something quiet and true, a melody that felt alive and personal. Even from a distance, they could sense that she was creating something special. In the audience, people began to whisper to each other, leaning closer to catch every note. There was curiosity, then surprise, then a growing appreciation. Her music wasn't just filling the room. It was reaching into hearts, connecting with emotions people didn't expect to feel from a small stage performance. The simplicity of the melody was deceptive, hiding the skill and feeling woven into each note. Slowly, smiles appeared, heads nodded, and eyes brightened with recognition of the talent before them. As she continued, her confidence grew. The trembling in her hands had vanished completely. She was no longer thinking about the audience or the applause. She was inside the music, letting it flow through her. Each note was a word, each phrase a sentence, and together they told a story of hope, patience, and quiet strength. The hall seemed to vibrate with the emotion she poured into the performance, and she knew she was giving the audience something they hadn't expected but would remember. The final few notes approached, and she felt a mix of relief and pride. Relief that she had played everything she had practiced, and pride that she had shared a piece of herself so fully. She let the last note linger, holding it just long enough for it to resonate in the hearts of those listening. Then she lowered her instrument, her chest rising and falling as she breathed deeply, letting the silence settle over the hall. For a moment, there was stillness. Then, slowly, a soft clap echoed through the room, followed by another and another. The audience began to rise to their feet, the sound of applause growing until it filled the hall completely. She looked out at the faces smiling, cheering, and clapping, and tears threatened to fill her eyes. She had expected nothing, yet this moment of recognition felt more incredible than anything she could have imagined. Backstage, her friend beamed with pride, and other performers approached, congratulating her on a performance that had surpassed all expectations. She smiled through the emotion, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the applause and everything to do with the knowledge that she had shared her music honestly and fully. The night had started quietly, with low expectations, but it had grown into something extraordinary, and she knew this was only the beginning of her journey. Back at her small apartment, she sat on the edge of her bed, still feeling the warmth of the applause from the night before. Her hands were sore, her fingers stiff from playing, but her heart was light and full. She kept replaying the performance in her mind, each note, each pause, each subtle rise and fall. She had been nervous before stepping onto the stage, but now, after hearing the audience's reaction, she felt a new kind of energy coursing through her. It was quiet, steady, and it made her want to practice even harder. The next morning, she woke early, her mind still alive with melodies. She didn't rush to work as usual. Instead, she sat by the window with her instrument and began to play. The notes floated softly through the room, blending with the morning sunlight streaming in. She was alone, yet she felt accompanied by the music. Every mistake she corrected, every new idea she tried, felt like a small victory. She had realized that the applause from the night before was not just a reward, it was a responsibility. It reminded her that her talent could touch people, and she wanted to explore that more. Her days became a delicate balance between work, practice, and reflection. During breaks, she would hum the melodies in her head, imagining the audience's faces as they listened. She found herself studying other musicians too, watching videos of performers who seemed effortless on stage, noting the subtle techniques and expressions they used. She wanted to learn, not to copy, but to grow, to find her own way to make music that could move people deeply. Evenings were the hardest. The apartment was quiet, and sometimes she felt a pang of loneliness. Music had always been her companion, but she longed for someone to share it with in person. Sometimes she played for her neighbor, an older woman who lived next door, sitting by the door to listen. She would smile, nodding along, her eyes closed as she let the music wash over her. It was small, simple moments like this that reminded her why she loved playing so much. The music was not just for applause. It was for connection, for touching lives in ways words could not. One afternoon, a friend from the show called. They were excited, talking about how people had been asking about her performance, how some even wanted to meet her or hear her play again. The young woman listened quietly, feeling a mixture of surprise and humility. She had not expected her performance to create such a stir. It was encouraging yet also daunting. The idea that people were now looking forward to her playing added a new weight to her practice. She knew she could not simply play the same way again. She wanted to grow, to offer something fresh and genuine each time. She began experimenting with new melodies, trying to weave in emotions she had never expressed before. Some attempts were clumsy, notes stumbled or felt empty, but she did not give up. Each failure was a lesson, a guide to what she needed to improve. Sometimes, she would record herself and listen carefully, discovering nuances she had never noticed while playing. She realized that the music she shared with the world could only be as deep as the effort she put into understanding herself and her instrument. Her confidence slowly grew, but it was quiet, gentle, like a small flame lighting up from within. She started to believe that she could perform again, perhaps in bigger spaces with more people listening. She still felt nervous, that fluttering in her stomach before playing, but now it was accompanied by excitement rather than fear. She looked forward to the challenge of stepping onto a stage and sharing her music in a new way. She also began to notice how people reacted differently to music than to words. At work, colleagues would talk and argue, but when she played softly during a break, even they would pause, listening, letting the sound settle over the room. It reminded her that music had a power that was quiet yet undeniable. It could reach people, calm them, inspire them, or simply bring a small moment of joy. She started to see her practice not as preparation for applause, but as a way to reach out and touch lives in ways that mattered. One evening, she received an invitation to play at a local community event. It was a small gathering, nothing like the talent show, but it offered another opportunity to share her music. She hesitated at first, unsure if she was ready to perform again so soon. The memory of the standing ovation made her heart race, both with fear and hope. After thinking it over, she decided to accept. She wanted to continue growing, to challenge herself and see how her music could connect with people in different spaces. The days leading up to the event were filled with careful preparation. She selected pieces that she felt confident about, but also ones that would push her to explore new emotions and techniques. She practiced tirelessly, not for perfection, but for authenticity. Each day, she felt herself becoming more comfortable with the idea of sharing her music publicly, and the nervous energy that had once held her back now became a source of focus and determination. On the day of the community event, she arrived early to set up. The space was modest, a small stage in the corner of a local hall, but it was warm and inviting. She tuned her instrument carefully, her fingers moving with precision and familiarity. She looked around at the audience, which was small but attentive. Each person's presence felt significant, and she wanted to honor that with every note she played. As she began to play, the music felt different from before. It was more intimate, more personal. She allowed herself to experiment, adding soft flourishes here and there, exploring the subtle shifts in tone and tempo. She noticed how the audience responded to even the smallest changes, leaning in, closing their eyes, letting the music reach them. It was a reminder that every performance was unique, and that connection with the audience was a dialogue, not just a presentation. After the performance, people approached her with smiles, expressing genuine appreciation. Some shared how certain melodies reminded them of personal memories. Others simply thanked her for creating a beautiful moment. She listened quietly, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. It was more than applause or recognition. It was the understanding that music could create shared experiences, moments of emotion and reflection that lingered long after the final note. She left the event that night feeling lighter, more confident in her abilities. The experience reinforced her belief that music was not just something to be performed, but something to be felt and shared. She realized that every note she played was a chance to connect with someone, to bring a small piece of beauty into their lives. And with that thought, she returned home, eager to continue practicing, to explore new melodies, and to see where her passion for music would take her next. The day of the bigger performance arrived, and the young woman felt a mixture of excitement and nerves she had never experienced before. This was not a small community gathering. It was a larger hall, filled with more people than she had ever played in front of. The stage was higher, the lights brighter, and the hum of conversation from the audience louder. Backstage, other performers moved confidently, chatting about their routines and showing off small tricks they planned to use. She watched them quietly, reminding herself that she had her own way of connecting with people, and that it was different, but no less powerful. She adjusted her instrument for the 100th time, feeling the familiar texture under her fingers. Her palms were slightly sweaty, and her heart raced like a drum. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, and let the image of the music fill her mind. The notes, the pauses, the subtle shifts in rhythm, all were ready. She remembered the standing ovation from her previous performance and felt a quiet strength grow inside her. She didn't need to be the loudest or the flashiest. She needed to be herself. As the announcer called her name, she stepped onto the stage, and the lights washed over her. The crowd was larger than she expected, faces blending into one another. But she focused on the music inside her mind. She let the first note escape gently, a soft sound that echoed through the hall. At first, it was delicate, almost understated, and she could hear some of the audience members shifting slightly, curious but unsure what to expect. She continued, and slowly her melody began to grow. Each note seemed to take on life, floating across the room and touching people in ways that words never could. She allowed herself to feel every emotion she had ever poured into music: joy, longing, hope, and quiet reflection. The audience leaned in, listening closely, some closing their eyes as if trying to hold on to the sound, feeling it in their hearts. She realized in that moment that music was not just about technical skill. It was about conveying something real, something human that connected everyone listening. Her fingers moved faster, yet precisely, carrying the melody through unexpected twists and turns. She added subtle changes in tone and volume, small flourishes that surprised even her, and the audience reacted instantly. There were soft gasps, a few murmurs of delight, and some smiles that spread across faces in the crowd. The young woman felt a rush of energy as she noticed the growing connection. Her music was no longer just a performance. It was a conversation, a shared experience between her and every person in the hall. Backstage, other performers and staff began to notice the shift. They could hear the music from the wings, and many stopped what they were doing to listen. There was something extraordinary happening, something that couldn't be explained simply by talent. It was passion, dedication, and honesty combined, reaching through the room and leaving a mark on everyone. Some performers exchanged glances, silently acknowledging that this was more than a routine performance. It was something memorable. As she reached the middle of her piece, she allowed herself to take a risk. She had been practicing a difficult section for weeks, and now she felt ready to play it with full expression. Her fingers danced over the instrument, each note carefully placed yet flowing naturally. The audience responded instantly, leaning forward, eyes wide, faces lighting up with amazement. She could sense that they had begun to forget the expectations they had brought with them. They were no longer thinking about what they had expected. They were feeling what she was creating. The young woman's heart raced, but in a good way. The adrenaline didn't distract her. It guided her, sharpening her focus and fueling her connection with the audience. She felt as though the music itself had taken over, her body becoming a vessel for the melody, carrying it effortlessly across the room. Every note, every pause, every subtle shift in tempo was alive, moving with intention and emotion. The audience, caught in the flow, responded with subtle gestures, nods, and smiles, each person experiencing the performance in a personal, profound way. As the piece approached its climax, she poured all her emotion into the music. There was a daring section, a fast sequence of notes that required precision and courage. She played it perfectly, feeling a surge of triumph as the melody soared. The audience's reaction was immediate, gasps of awe, whispers of admiration, and a few people leaning forward in their seats as if drawn by the sheer power of the music. She felt exhilarated, yet grounded, knowing that the connection she had with the audience was real, not just a fleeting moment of excitement. The final notes approached, and she slowed deliberately, letting the sound linger and resonate throughout the hall. Each note hung in the air, rich with emotion, until finally, she played the last note and allowed it to fade naturally. Silence fell for a brief, suspended moment, heavy and full, before the applause began. It started quietly, then swelled into a wave of sound that filled the entire space. People were clapping, cheering, and rising to their feet. The young woman felt tears prick her eyes, overwhelmed by the unexpected intensity of the response. She had given everything she had, and it had been received with honesty and admiration. She looked out at the crowd, seeing faces she didn't know but feeling a profound connection with each person. People were smiling, some wiping tears from their eyes, others simply staring in awe. It was more than applause. It was recognition of the time, effort, and emotion she had poured into her music. She felt a quiet joy, a sense of fulfillment that went beyond any previous experience. She had not just played notes. She had told a story, and the audience had listened, felt, and responded. Backstage, her friend rushed to meet her, eyes wide with amazement. They hugged tightly, sharing the exhilaration of the moment. Other performers approached as well, congratulating her on a performance that had exceeded every expectation. Some admitted that they had never heard anything like it, that her music had a depth and honesty that was rare and unforgettable. The young woman smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with praise or applause. It was the knowledge that she had truly shared something meaningful, something that had touched others. That night, as she walked home through quiet streets lit by the soft glow of streetlights, she reflected on the performance. The experience had been nerve-wracking, exhilarating, and transformative all at once. She realized that music was not just about playing well. It was about courage, vulnerability, and connecting with others on a level beyond words. She understood that each performance, no matter how simple it might appear, had the potential to move people in unexpected ways. The young woman returned to her apartment, exhausted but filled with a sense of accomplishment. She sat down, instrument in hand, and played softly for herself. This time, there was no audience, no applause, just her and the music, as it had always been. But the notes felt different, alive with the memory of the night, echoing with the joy and connection she had experienced. She knew that this was only the beginning, that every performance would offer new challenges, new opportunities, and new moments of connection. As she put her instrument away and prepared for bed, she felt a quiet determination. She would continue to practice, to grow, to explore the depths of her music. She had learned that talent alone was not enough. It was the combination of dedication, emotion, and courage that created something truly remarkable. And with that thought, she drifted to sleep, dreaming of melodies yet to be discovered and the faces of people whose hearts she had touched with her music. The young woman felt a mix of excitement and nerves as she prepared for what could be her most important performance yet. This time, it was not a local hall or community event. She had been invited to play at a larger venue, a place where many had heard of her name after the previous performances. The idea that more people would see and hear her was thrilling, but it also brought a weight of responsibility. She wanted to live up to the growing expectations, yet she reminded herself that the most important thing was to stay true to the music inside her. Backstage, she quietly observed the other performers as they practiced. Some were confident, moving with ease and showing off with tricks or dramatic flourishes. Others were as nervous as she felt, quietly rehearsing and muttering under their breath. She didn't compare herself to anyone. Instead, she focused on the music she would play, the story she wanted to tell. She had learned that it wasn't about impressing others with speed or complexity. It was about creating a connection, letting every note carry emotion. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted her instrument and tuned it carefully. The soft clicks and twangs of the strings seemed louder in the quiet backstage area. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, and imagined the melody flowing naturally, each note finding its place. She could feel the hours of practice, the dedication, the small victories, and mistakes all guiding her fingers and thoughts. This preparation was not just for herself. It was for the people waiting to hear something they had never expected. When her name was announced, she stepped onto the stage. The bright lights and the larger audience felt intimidating at first, but she focused on the music, letting it wash over her like a familiar friend. She played the first note softly, allowing it to resonate through the hall. The crowd listened, curious, expecting perhaps a simple performance as they had heard in stories. But her music began to unfold in ways they did not anticipate. Her melody grew gradually, gentle yet purposeful, and it started to catch the attention of everyone in the room. Some leaned forward in their seats, intrigued by the depth of the sound. Others closed their eyes, letting the music carry them somewhere unexpected. The young woman felt a growing confidence as she noticed their reactions. She was no longer just playing notes. She was telling a story, sharing a piece of herself through the music. Each rise and fall of the melody reflected her emotions and the countless hours of practice she had dedicated to perfecting her craft. The piece became more complex as she added subtle flourishes, weaving intricate patterns that seemed effortless. The audience began to respond with soft murmurs of surprise and admiration. The quiet, measured confidence she carried allowed her to play with precision while expressing vulnerability and emotion. This was not about speed or technique. It was about honesty, the ability to touch the hearts of those listening. She could see the shift in the room. The audience was no longer just listening. They were feeling. As she approached the climax of her performance, the music soared. She played a section that she had been preparing for weeks, delicate yet challenging. Her fingers moved rapidly, but each note was clear and intentional. The audience's reaction was immediate. Gasps of awe, whispered comments, and expressions of surprise spread across the hall. People who had expected a simple tune were now witnessing something extraordinary. The young woman felt a thrill, not from their reaction, but from the realization that her music had reached them deeply. She continued, pouring her heart into each note, allowing every emotion she had ever felt to find a voice through her instrument. The energy in the room grew, and she felt connected to the audience in a way she had never experienced. It was as if the music had created an invisible bridge between her and every person listening. Their attention, their emotion, and their presence amplified the performance, and she responded with a sense of freedom and expression that made her fingers dance across the strings. Backstage, a few performers paused to listen. They were impressed, not just by her skill, but by the way she had commanded the room through emotion and honesty. It was a reminder that talent alone was not enough. The ability to touch people's hearts was what made a performance unforgettable. The young woman, in her focus on the music, did not notice the subtle glances of admiration or surprise from those around her. She was completely immersed, giving everything she had to the moment. The final notes approached, and she slowed her pace deliberately. She allowed each sound to linger, letting it resonate fully before moving on to the next. The audience was silent, captivated, hanging on every note. There was no rush, no distraction, just music and shared emotion. She could feel the collective breath of the crowd, the tension, and the awe as she reached the last few measures. When the final note faded, there was a moment of silence, a suspended heartbeat of expectation. Then, as if released all at once, the applause erupted. It was overwhelming, filling the hall with energy and joy. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, and whistling. Some had tears in their eyes, moved by the depth of feeling in her performance. The young woman stood frozen for a moment, taking it all in. She had given her best, and it had been received with recognition and admiration that went beyond anything she had imagined. The moment was both humbling and exhilarating. She looked out into the audience, seeing faces illuminated with awe and happiness. Every expression told her that her music had reached them, that it had made them feel something real. She felt a sense of triumph, not from the applause alone, but from knowing that she had shared a piece of herself, fully and honestly. The standing ovation seemed endless, a wave of energy that carried her through the hall. Backstage, her friend rushed to meet her, their face alight with pride and excitement. They hugged tightly, sharing the joy of the moment. Other performers and staff came over, congratulating her on a performance that had surpassed every expectation. People expressed surprise, saying they had never heard anything like it. The young woman smiled, feeling warmth that had nothing to do with praise. It was the understanding that her music had genuinely connected with others, creating a memory that would linger long after the performance ended. After the event, she walked home through quiet streets, reflecting on the evening. The experience had been transformative. She realized that music was not just about playing notes correctly or performing for recognition. It was about courage, honesty, and connection. Every performance offered a chance to share a piece of oneself, to create moments of emotion and understanding that could touch others in ways words never could. She felt grateful for the opportunity, for the preparation, and for the journey that had led her to this point. Back in her apartment, she sat quietly with her instrument, playing softly for herself. This time, there was no audience, no applause, only the music and the memory of the connection she had made. The notes felt alive, echoing with the energy and emotion of the night. She knew that her journey was only beginning, that there would be more performances, more challenges, and more opportunities to share her music. She felt a quiet determination to continue, to explore new melodies, to deepen her expression, and to keep reaching hearts through the music she loved. As she placed her instrument down and prepared for rest, she reflected on what she had learned. Talent was important, but it was only part of the equation. Dedication, emotion, and courage were what transformed skill into something unforgettable. She understood that each time she performed, she had a chance to surprise, to move, and to connect. The applause and recognition were rewarding, but the true satisfaction came from knowing she had touched lives in a genuine way. And with that thought, she drifted to sleep, ready to embrace the next chapter of her musical journey with hope and determination. The young woman woke up the next morning feeling a sense of calm she hadn't felt in weeks. The standing ovation, the applause, and the reactions of the audience still lingered in her mind, filling her with warmth. She had given everything she had during the last performance, and for the first time, she truly believed in her ability to touch people with her music. It was not about being famous or seeking recognition. It was about connecting, sharing, and being honest with herself and the audience. She spent the morning playing softly in her apartment, letting the notes flow naturally, exploring the melodies that had been forming in her mind during the past weeks. Her fingers moved with ease, her confidence solid, and she felt a deep joy in each sound she created. It was a private moment, but it felt significant. She realized that the music had changed her. It had taught her patience, focus, courage, and the beauty of creating something that could inspire others. Later, she received messages from people who had attended the performance. Some shared how the music had reminded them of personal experiences, while others simply thanked her for the beauty she had shared. She smiled as she read each message, feeling a sense of connection that went beyond the stage. The impact of her performance had reached people in ways she had not anticipated. It was a reminder that every note played had the potential to create a ripple effect, touching lives and hearts. Encouraged by the positive feedback, she began preparing for her next performance. She wanted to explore new melodies, to challenge herself, and to continue growing as a musician. Each day, she dedicated time to practice, study, and reflection. She listened to other musicians, attended small workshops, and experimented with new techniques. Her music became more expressive, nuanced, and emotional with every session. She understood that the journey was continuous, and every effort contributed to her growth. Her confidence also grew in other areas of life. She found herself speaking more freely, engaging with people, and expressing herself in ways she had avoided before. Music had taught her not just technical skill, but also self-assurance and the courage to pursue her passions. She began to see that the world was filled with opportunities to share her talent and make meaningful connections, and she was ready to embrace them. Weeks later, she was invited to perform at a special cultural event in the city. It was a prestigious occasion, attended by people from different walks of life, including experienced musicians and critics. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, but she reminded herself that the key was to stay true to her music. It was not about impressing anyone with speed or complexity. It was about creating an authentic experience, allowing the audience to feel what she felt as she played. Backstage, she noticed other performers preparing with meticulous care. Some were confident, while others were visibly anxious. She focused on her instrument, feeling the familiar texture under her fingers, and let her mind fill with the melodies she had been practicing. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, and imagined the connection she wanted to create. This mental preparation helped calm her nerves and strengthen her focus. When it was her turn, she walked onto the stage, greeted by a sea of expectant faces. She could feel the energy of the audience, their curiosity, and their anticipation. She lifted her instrument and allowed the first note to escape, soft, clear, and deliberate. The melody began simply, drawing listeners in with its gentle flow. But as she continued, the music grew in depth and emotion, unfolding in ways that captured everyone's attention. The audience was silent, captivated by the unexpected richness of the performance. She moved through the piece with precision and feeling, each note a reflection of her dedication and passion. The subtle changes in tempo, the rise and fall of the melody, and the emotion behind each phrase created a powerful impact. She could see people leaning forward, closing their eyes, and letting the music touch them in a personal, profound way. It was as if the melody had created a bridge between her and every individual present, connecting hearts without a single word spoken. The young woman played with increasing confidence, allowing herself to explore the full range of expression her instrument offered. She added small flourishes, experimented with tempo, and let her emotions guide her fingers. Each section of the piece built naturally, leading to a climactic moment that brought the entire hall into the experience. Gasps, murmurs of admiration, and wide-eyed expressions reflected the surprise and delight of the audience. They had come expecting a simple performance, but what they were experiencing was extraordinary. As she approached the final notes, she slowed deliberately, letting each sound linger and resonate. The silence that followed was powerful, almost palpable, before the applause erupted. The reaction was overwhelming, a wave of energy and appreciation that filled the hall. People stood, clapped, and cheered, some with tears in their eyes, others simply smiling in awe. She felt a rush of emotion, a mix of gratitude, humility, and joy. She had shared a piece of herself, and it had been received with genuine admiration. Backstage, her friend rushed to meet her, beaming with pride. Other performers and staff also approached, offering congratulations and expressing their amazement. The young woman smiled through her emotions, feeling warmth that went beyond praise. It was the knowledge that she had genuinely connected with people, that her music had created an unforgettable experience. She realized that the true reward was not the applause, but the lasting impact of the performance on those who listened. After the event, she walked home through quiet streets, reflecting on the journey she had taken. From nervous beginnings to standing ovations, each experience had shaped her, teaching patience, resilience, and the importance of staying true to herself. She understood that music was not merely a skill to be mastered, but a means of communication, connection, and expression. Every performance was a chance to share something meaningful, to touch hearts, and to leave a memory that lingered long after the final note faded. Back in her apartment, she played softly for herself, savoring the quiet moments of creation. This time, there was no audience, no applause, only the music and the memory of the connections she had made. She realized that the joy of playing came not only from external recognition but also from the act of creation itself, the ability to bring beauty into the world. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to continue exploring melodies, emotions, and stories through her music. She reflected on the lessons she had learned, that talent alone was not enough, that dedication and honesty were essential, and that courage to be vulnerable could create unforgettable experiences. She understood that every note she played had the potential to touch someone, to inspire, to bring comfort or joy. The standing ovations, the applause, and the admiration were wonderful, but the deeper fulfillment came from knowing that her music had made a real difference. As she put her instrument down and prepared for rest, she felt content and hopeful. She had grown not only as a musician but as a person. Her journey had taught her the value of hard work, the beauty of connection, and the power of authenticity. She knew that there would be many more performances, challenges, and opportunities ahead. Each one would bring a chance to surprise, to inspire, and to continue creating moments that mattered. With a quiet smile, she drifted to sleep, dreaming of new melodies and future performances. She felt ready to face whatever came next, confident in her abilities and the power of her music to touch lives. The journey had been long and filled with challenges, but it had also been rewarding beyond measure. She knew that no matter where her path led, the music within her would always guide her, inspire her, and connect her with others in ways that words alone could never achieve.